Hello, everyone, and welcome to Campus Conversations, the Shawnee Community College podcast. My name is Kevin Huntsberger. I am the Executive Director of Public Information and Marketing here at Shawnee, and we are joined this week by Dr. April Teske, who is the Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness. Sorry about that. I meant to double check that before we started recording here, but you've been here at Shawnee for
2.5 years.
I was going to say just about a year or so longer than I have been here, and we're going to be talking cereal here in just a few minutes. We've got the milk ready and some of the fruits and whatnot, but we're gonna get to know Dr. Teske a little bit before we pour our cereal and start enjoying that. So, Dr. Teske, what is the Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness?
Well, institutional effectiveness encompasses the effectiveness of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to take in a lot of things. So strategic planning, our operational planning and management, the collecting the data and using the data needed to ensure that what we are doing is effective, right?
Yeah.
So a big part of what I do is leading the institution in what we collect, how we collect it, when and how we look at it, and making decisions and learning how to make decisions based on that data. Otherwise, you don't know where you began. So you don't have that benchmark to know where you need to go and how to plan. But then as you are operating and moving along in the college, periodically taking a look at that to know if you need to make adjustments or if you're on the right trajectory.
And you have quite a history in education and higher education, for that matter.
Yeah, I was one of those people who always knew I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
You know, so from the moment, my mom talks about how I didn't cry when I went to kindergarten, she cried when I went to kindergarten. So I would, at the end of the school year and at breaks, I would ask the teacher to give me all of her extra material she didn't use. So I would take home, all the workbook pages that we didn't tear out, that we never got to, like they would let me take those home. And I'll never forget, I think it was second or third grade. Do you remember the big boxes of reading cards that you would take out and you would read and then you would have to do a test on it?
I do.
Right?
Yes.
Well, I remember I think it was second or third grade. My grade school decided we were moving away from that and I struck gold.
Really?
They let me take it all home.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I used to, my poor brother, I used to sitting down and teach to him, in the summers, and I had my grade book. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. So I began volunteering actually in grade school and through junior high and high school with the special education classrooms.
Okay.
So I went into special education. I got my bachelor's degree in elementary ed and special ed. So I was a special education teacher. And then I got my master's degree in administration and became a director of student support services for one of our service area schools.
Okay.
And then became a principal. So I was a principal in a county north of us for almost 8 years. And then I left there and went to SIU as the assessment coordinator in the School of Education for the teacher education program and finished my doctorate there.
Okay.
So I was there almost 8 years. And then I came here. So it's always been, for me, about school and education. I've just never left it, obviously. And so with this job, I can truly say I have taught from pre-K all the way through bachelor's, master's degree institution. Yeah.
And you are from Southern Illinois.
I am.
You mentioned that earlier and grew up here. So, growing up, we're both, Gen Xers, same age range and whatnot. And this podcast is about cereal. So we're going to kind of transition into that. And, you were talking about going to school. And I can remember as a kid, my brother and I never left the house without having breakfast. My mom was very insistent upon that. And, you know, it wasn't a grab and go, it wasn't a granola bar or a, you know, a snack cake or anything. It was sit down and eat. And a lot of those mornings, it was a bowl of cereal. And you've got a cereal for us this week that is going to bring back a lot of memories, I think, for a lot of folks that are watching.
Yeah, so I brought Honey Nut Cheerios.
A classic.
So I have never been a milk drinker. Don't like it. In fact, I was an adult before I tried yogurt.
Really?
Or sour cream.
How are you with ice cream?
Ice cream I'm fine with, clearly. Because it's ice cream. I mean,
much different, right? Yes, exactly.
In fact, it's something my husband and I do several nights a week is ice cream, right? But, and I think it's because it has flavor. And I can remember a treat was a Dixie cream donut and a carton of chocolate milk.
Okay.
Or, you know, like when the lunch milk people would force milk down you in grade school, I would go to the chocolate milk. So I think I had to learn to like a milk.
Yeah.
Because, you know, back in the day in elementary school, maybe it's the only part of school I didn't care for, right? Was that 10 o'clock milk break when the fifth graders came in and they watched your classroom while you took cookies and milk break? We had to drink milk.
Wow.
Well, there was no way you were going to get me to drink white milk.
Yeah.
So I think I just learned to like chocolate milk, right? So I was never much of a cereal drinker growing up because the thought of like soaking my food in milk.
Like, not appealing.
Yeah, didn't like that. But as I got older and discovered different forms of milk, like we've got almond milk here, you know, that kind of a thing, I've kind of grown to like it. And this is one of the few that are gluten-free, and I don't eat gluten.
Yeah.
And the best part about something like Honey Nut Cheerios is you can put stuff in it, like bananas and strawberries and blueberries, and so it can be different every single time you eat it.
That's a great way to think about it, because a lot of times, you know, the cereal companies will produce a particular version of their cereal, and then they'll add, you know, the extra fruit or the dried fruit or whatever it is. But with Honey Nut Cheerios, now I love Honey Nut Cheerios. Regular Cheerios, and I'm, you know, cause
it's kind of like baby food, right?
Yeah,
it's
so it is. You know, you give the kids, and they're
when as soon as they get that little pincher thing going,
yes,
right?
exactly. My daughter actually is a big fan of the Honey Nut Cheerios as well, and that's usually, you know, we've all kind of are trying to graduate from the sugary sweet cereals at our house, and so, you know, and that, you know, Honey Nut Cheerios has enough of that sweetness, but it still feels kind of like a grown-up cereal, if you will. But it's something that appeals, I think, across the board for kids and adults. Yeah,
I think so too. And you know, when I first started eating cereal, even I would put the milk in because you're supposed to do that, and you gotta kind of get it wet. Then I would take my bowl to the sink, and I would like tilt it over with my spoon and pour as much of the milk out as I could. Then I would eat it.
Really?
Yeah. So of course, as an adult, you know, we widen our spectrum of what we're willing to eat and to try, and so now, like what you and Mandy were talking about in the first podcast, is I do the same thing. I'll pour the milk in. I'm not a soggy milk or a soggy cereal eater, and then if I've got more, you know, milk than I did cereal, then, you know, you have to keep adding more.
So talk to me a little bit more about the almond milk, though. What have you tried other versions? My son, my oldest son, we discovered early on, had a milk allergy. He eventually outgrew it, but almond milk I don't think was an option, or at least it wasn't as widely around back then. This was almost 24 years ago. But we had soy milk, and we had to doctor it up and put a little chocolate in there, or you know, but over cereal and stuff he would eat that. But I do enjoy almond milk now, but it was one of those things that until my kid had an allergy to cow's milk, that, you know, never really considered other milk alternatives.
There are so many more options. You know, I do it, you know, I'm not going to say I'm not going to use regular cow's milk, you know. If I've got it, you know, that's what my husband will use if he, you know, uses it. But, you know, if I've got it around, I might use it, you know, to cook. But I use almond milk pretty much for everything.
Really?
Even to cook in.
Yeah.
Cook with, mashed potatoes or,
Yeah.
recipes. But I like almond milk because it doesn't have a distinct flavor. Like soy milk is going to change whatever you put it in.
Yeah.
It just has a distinct flavor. Oat milk the same way. I like oat milk a lot, but it's higher in calories. I figure if I'm going to do a dairy alternative, I might as well also take a look at fat and calories and other nutrients. And I've just figured, almond milk is also, you're going to find it almost anywhere, whereas you're not going to find the oat, you're not going to find the soy. And so it's just been a really good one for me. And my kids too, that most of them will drink almond milk.
Like I said, my daughter, she is into more of that, and will use the almond milk for like smoothies or making stuff along those lines as well. Not we all still drink regular milk, but I was the same way with the cereal, and once the cereal was gone and there was still milk in the bowl, always pouring a little extra. Let's go ahead and bust into this and continue talking. With Mandy when we did this first episode with the Monster cereals, and be sure to go back and check that one out. We talked about that nostalgia now. Do you have a nostalgia link back to childhood with Honey Nut Cheerios? I'm trying to remember what year
Not necessarily,
they came out, but I do remember, we were kids obviously still when Honey Nut Cheerios was a thing, and a lot of the cereals back then, we had Rice Krispies with Snack Crackle and Pop, Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam. We had all these mascots and characters, and regular old Cheerios was just plain old Cheerios in a yellow box. And now Honey Nut Cheerios, and I'm curious to wonder if Post decided to get into that game of adding some characters to their lineup here. And I'm going to take some I love blueberries. Actually, I had some earlier for breakfast.
So another trick I do is I'll buy the big bags of the frozen blueberries and strawberries, and like the night before you can just stick them in the refrigerator, and then the next day they're good to go. That way you don't have fresh around to spoil.
That's and I do the frozen berries as well, but I am not as proactive as you, and I get here in the morning and I usually zap mine for about a minute because I prepare in the morning at home and then come here and eat. But that's a good idea to set them out and let them thaw a little bit before they get too bad. Talk to me though, what other cereals were you eating as a kid? Because, I think kids of the 70s and 80s, it was breakfast, it was a late night snack before bed, it was dinner some nights.
Well, so, for me, I don't remember cereal at breakfast.
Yeah?
My nostalgia with cereal is the cabinet where we kept the cereal. I can remember there being a few standards. Rice Krispies and shredded wheat, for sure.
Okay.
Because those are the ones that my dad really enjoyed. And my dad is a breakfast eater. Like, all breakfast foods are game. And so we would have breakfast for dinner. Sometimes. And so when I think about cereal, it's that, I think about that cabinet. I think about even when my kids were little bitty in diapers and learning how to walk, in fact, I think I've got a picture of my oldest who they learned to open that cabinet and stand on it because the Cheerios were in there, right?
Yeah.
And they would stand on their tippy toes at the bottom of the cabinet and try to reach up and, get the Cheerios. I can remember that, and just those times when my dad was in charge of supper.
Okay.
We would have eggs, bacon, and cereal.
Yeah.
But my memories of breakfast are similar to yours. Like, we didn't leave without breakfast, and for a great portion of my childhood, my mom was at home, in the mornings, and so we would have a good breakfast. Occasionally, I was a Pop-Tart addict. Oh yeah,
love Pop-Tarts.
And so wasn't allowed to have them all the time, but those were a treat.
What's your favorite flavor of Pop-Tart?
It's the strawberry.
Mine too. I love strawberry Pop-Tarts.
For sure. And the other thing I remember, and my mom, if she watches this, she's gonna die, but again, things change when you become an adult, because one of the things I remember when I was younger is I didn't like generic.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to eat that generic Pop-Tart. Or those aren't Cheerios, those are O's.
Yeah.
Like, who eats that, you know? And so, you know, if it wasn't name brand, I wasn't gonna, gonna go there.
Sure.
So she had to buy name brand Pop-Tarts for me.
You know, the weird thing about Pop-Tarts, I worked at a grocery store when I was in high school, and the grocery store brand, and it's not in existence anymore, but their Pop-Tarts were actually my favorite brand of Pop-Tarts. So I would buy those on my dinner break at work and eat Pop-Tarts for dinner sometimes. So, but yeah, you know, when you were talking about Rice Krispies and some of the other cereals, I feel like with Cheerios, you know, you had the original brand of just Cheerios, and then the variation Honey Nut Cheerios.
Right.
And now I think they've done Frosted, and they've done several different versions. To me, the second version is the best, and a lot of times though, you know, I like the original, you know, Doritos. I like original Doritos. I like original Pringles. I like original M&Ms. So when we doctor some of these products up, sometimes to me it takes away, but with Cheerios, I feel like they made a step up when they went with the Honey Nut equation.
Well, I agree. I think the Honey Nut is definitely better than because what do we do with the regular Cheerios? We add sugar.
Right, exactly.
Sweetener, right, to eat it.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So this has the honey.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that it's any better, but I guess I just feel better not like adding it.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. But this is one, most generic cereals, I don't mind. But Honey Nut Cheerios, I have tried the Honey O's and all those generic. There is a difference with this one. That's just maybe just me, but.
It's funny that you say that, because just in the last week or two, you know, I was talking to my daughter likes the Honey Nut Cheerios. We were at Sam's, got a box of Honey Nut Cheerios. A couple weeks later, I was at Aldi and got the Aldi brand, and not knocking anybody's products here, but there's a clear difference between the two. And so yeah, that sometimes generic is fine, but there are certain foods I think that people won't mess around with when it comes to generic. For me, soda's the big one on the generic soda versus, you know, Coke or Pepsi or whatever your brand of choice is. So what else do you like to do with breakfast? You know, nowadays, are you still eating breakfast before you leave the house? Are you eating a Pop-Tart every now and then?
Well, I have breakfast. I'm an early riser during the week, so I'm usually up by 4.
Wow.
And so by 5 o'clock I'm hungry. So by 5:30 I eat, but it's something really light, so it's not heavy. A couple of rice cakes with, you know, like coconut oil or olive oil or something on them. But then I have a second breakfast. And my second breakfast is probably the real one, and that's usually around 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and, you know, a banana and peanut butter, or, you know, our kitchen here is pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And they make pretty good breakfast. It's my favorite meal that they make. So if I go close to 10, which is when they close breakfast, they usually have salad bar out, and then I can get a veggie omelet.
Oh.
And then that usually tides me over through most of the lunch.
Yeah.
And so
that's a great idea, the veggie omelet. Yeah. I've been in there before to get an omelet, and I always, at the last minute, go with the bacon and cheese instead of getting the veggies. So that's a good alternative. And, you know, here at Shawnee Community College, again, we mentioned it earlier, the executive director of institutional effectiveness and the things that you do and the research. And I mean, you're obviously looking at a lot of numbers and a lot of data, and you know, how do you make that translatable to people like me in marketing to kind of help spread that message and you know, explaining it to our board members or explaining it to other members of the administration, faculty, and students? I mean, you have people who have obviously varying degrees of understanding, and I imagine you have to kind of cater to those, just kind of like with marketing needs. We're pushing this out to different platforms and whatnot.
Well, first of all, you make it not so scary. It's every day. So usually when people think about data, they think about numbers, that quantitative part of the world. And people, for whatever say they're a numbers person or they're not a numbers person. And very often when they see me coming, someone will go, oh, there's the numbers girl, or there's the numbers person. And I usually say to them, really, I'm not that much of a numbers person. I'm an information person.
Okay.
And that's what data is. Data is information. And it comes in all forms. It comes in numbers, but it comes in observations. It comes in anecdotals. It comes in the written word. It's everywhere. And we are taking it in constantly. So if we are taking it in, let's be intentional about what we take in and what we pay attention to, right? So what we do is we often talk about that as key performance indicators. So every organization has metrics that they take a look at for their performance. And we, take a look at what research says the community colleges should take a look at. So that's anything from numbers like, our head count, right? Our duplicated head count. In other words, if I'm one student and I'm registered in 5 different classes, I count 5 different times. Whereas unduplicated, I could take 12 classes, but I'm only counting once, right?
Yeah.
So, that would be numbers. But what about student perceptions?
Yeah.
Of the first time. What are you filming right now? What are you doing? You're doing a virtual tour.
Right. Yep.
So we want to impact that initial impression and the perception. Well, that's not numbers, but that's information we want to measure, right? And then based on what we hear back, you're going to make adjustments. You're going to make improvements. Like I'm sure that when you're finished, you're not going to roll out the version and go, it's done, everybody.
Yeah.
You're going to test it.
Right.
Right. You're going to test it. You're going to ask for feedback from students, from faculty, from staff, maybe community members, and you'll make adjustments until you get it right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One of the other things that you have started here probably in the last 6 months is, and this podcast will air after it has happened for November, but the Thursdays at 3. It's the first Thursday of every month, and it's kind of a way to get everybody either together in the same room or at least virtually, with our extension centers. Everybody can kind of join in, faculty and staff, and just kind of learn a little bit more about what you do, what Gabriel does, in your department. And I feel like those have been very beneficial, and they have the best snacks. You knock it out of the park every month with the snacks.
Well, first of all, we talked about my background, in education, elementary education, right? So food is a motivator.
Yes.
Food is a huge motivator. And I also learned early on that if students come to you and they're hungry, that's what they're going to focus on, right?
Yeah.
If you're cold, if you're too hot,
yeah.
if you're hungry, not feeling well, that's going to interfere with your level of engagement. It's going to interfere with what you hang on to, what you attend to, what the amount of information that you learn. So food's a motivator. Food is one of those basic needs. It also lends itself to a little bit more comfort. And it is Thursdays at 3. And we chose that time because I wanted faculty to have the opportunity to attend. And very often, what are our faculty doing?
Yeah.
They're in classrooms, they're teaching. And so they don't have as much flexibility to attend things that we do. So the semester that I started it, I took a look at our schedule. And at that time, Thursdays at that 3 o'clock slot was the slot that had the least amount of classes happening during the week. See, that's using data, right, to be most effective, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I picked that day and at that time, and I couldn't decide what to call it. And I was talking to someone, I was like, I don't really know what to call it. We're going to meet Thursdays at 3. I went, Thursdays at 3.
The alliteration was there. It was perfect storm.
And so I should have called it the first Thursday at 3. So at least people know, it's on Thursdays and it's at 3. And I tease that even if I end up changing it, I'm going to still call it Thursdays at 3.
We'll be meeting Mondays at noon, but it's going to be Thursdays at 3. I actually like that idea, but it has become beneficial, and I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to you're more than just the numbers lady that's roaming around here on campus.
Well, you know, I'm big on language. You know that. I think that what we speak and the way we speak is part of an organization's effectiveness. So, you know, just building a language around data and about improvement and about effectiveness is important. I mean, we started out saying, what is effectiveness?
Yeah.
Right? And it's basically the measure of how well you're doing something. Okay? So talking about that, talking about the different types of data, different sources of data. I mean, there is so much to data governance that most people don't think about, that weirdos like me do. So, you know, not only what we collect, which are those key performance measures or indicators for our type of organization, which for us is a community college, but then is how are you going to collect it? And that's important, because how you collect it is going to speak to the validity of that data on the back end, how reliable it's going to be, like how many people did it filter through before it finally landed where it needed to land, right? So every human touch is an opportunity for error, right? But also the purpose of collecting data, and this was the biggest thing I noticed when I first came, and what I've always talked about anywhere I've been, is it does us no good to collect something that we're not using. So if you're not using it, ask yourself, do I need it? If you say, yes, I need it, then we need to say, why aren't you using it?
Right.
And typically the answer is, it's too cumbersome to do anything with once we've collected it, right? So we're collecting it somewhere, and then it's either too cumbersome to glean it from wherever we're collecting it, or it takes too much time and effort to clean it and audit it, remove the errors, make sure it's accurate, to put it in some kind of a readable format, that by the time we've done that, the ship has sailed and we really don't even need to take a look at it anymore. And so that's part of what we do is, and you know, we have something like, we have our success framework, which is the Shawnee College Effectiveness System. And it is an effectiveness system that was actually created, copyrighted by our president, Dr. Taylor. And he's given us permission to use that. And so a big part of what I do is I've taken it on the road, you know, from department to department, office to office, and we're personalizing that for people. And we're saying, yeah, there are something like 498 key performance indicators in there: student success indicators, employee engagement indicators, institutional infrastructure effectiveness indicators. But all 498 don't apply to you, Kevin. Right. Which ones do? Yeah. Well, guess what? In student success, there's a whole key performance measure on marketing, right? There's one whole measure on recruiting. I bet there are some key performance indicators that would be important for you. So helping you recognize that, and then say, are you collecting this information? If you're not, do you need to? And if you do, how can we do it efficiently to where that data is actionable? And it requires on the back end the least amount of cleaning and auditing and prepping to use. And so, as you can tell, I love that. I love what I do. And it goes all the way back to my roots as a special education teacher. Because when you're teaching behavior disorders, you know, like I taught, it's all in data collection. It is what we call the ABC, the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence immediately following that behavior. You're constantly, as that teacher, you're constantly collecting data on the student, not only the student, but the environment the student's in, the teacher that's in the room. And you're constantly assessing that, and you're making tweaks and you're making changes in order to impact that behavior, either increase the appropriate behavior or decrease the inappropriate behavior. Right. So that's really what has let this path has kind of winded me to, right? And then of course my PhD was in in education, curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And so my dissertation, my research was in assessment and using data.
And it's great that you're able to continue to use that and then help others develop and go on and you know, using that data that you're collecting and analyzing and looking at. It's not just a show and tell thing, but it's an actual show and do and execute and make a difference here at Shawnee Community College, which has been an ongoing process too. I know there's been a big, you know, COVID affected a lot of people in a lot of ways, and higher education is not exempt from that, or educate, you know, K through 12 as well, impacted greatly by it. So, you know, we're continuing to rebound and rebuild and in my opinion, make a better learning environment and workplace for the people who do come to Shawnee Community College.
Yeah, that's you know, that's the goal. I mean, I think that for me and many people who work here at Shawnee College, I've, you know, been privileged to have real personal conversations with. That's why they're here, and that's why they're at a community college. I mean, the word community is not in our title arbitrarily.
Right.
You know, we are here to serve our community and the residents of our counties, you know, that we serve. And I would challenge you to find anyone who said that the reason why they were here was for any reason other than to impact the people that we serve, which is directly the people in our communities. And so that looks different for every one of us, every employee. It looks different. You know, there are those of us who have daily one-on-one interactions all day long with students. There are some who have no contact with students, but their work is not diminished because their work, this is the effectiveness again, this is the operational management, right? And so if you came to my Capacity Builders workshop, when we did our shared governance retreat, talked about the body, and everyone got a note card with a body part on it. You can't do much if you're just the foot. You can't do much if you're just the hand. But when we put that whole body together, look what we can do. It didn't mean that the hand was more important or the arm was more important. We were all important so we can function the way we're supposed to function.
That's so very well said. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this week's episode of Serial?
I don't think so. Appreciate you doing this. This is exciting, and I'll put a plug in. He's not just doing the Serial podcast, but our president's doing a series that has been very, very enlightening on change, which is inevitable, and so we've got to talk about it, right?
Absolutely. And in the latest episode of that, we're talking about the future and the technologies and all of that good stuff as well. So it's been a very eye-opening conversation with Dr. Tim Taylor. Again, check out our previous episodes on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have questions, comments, or concerns, email podcasts@shawneecc.edu. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. For Dr. April Teskey, I'm Kevin Huntsberger. Have a great week.